What's up, everybody? Today is a little bit chilly here in Michigan, but there's a topic on my mind that I gotta share with you guys, and it's about creativity and opportunity and thinking about things very, very differently. There's a radical topic that I want to touch on today that is, you're gonna have to put your thinking caps on, okay? So get your thinking caps on, and let's talk about this. So when I first came upon this this new idea about thinking and how to think about the brain differently, I first stumbled upon it in Napoleon Hill's book, Think and Grow Rich. He gets really deep into this topic, and at first it's like whoa, like it's pretty eye-opening, it's pretty bizarre. And especially when he starts talking about like electrons and things, like things being more solid than another thing, and that when you look at down on like under a microscope and look at the electrons, how nothing's actually solid at all, and there's space in between. So he gets real deep into this stuff. So I'm not gonna blow your mind too much if you haven't heard about this stuff before. But one thing he talked about the brain as being like a radio station, okay? So your brain is like sending out frequencies like a radio station, and you can tune to a different frequency. Like 98.5 has country, 103.3 has, you know, like all the new songs and stuff. So he's thinking about the brain as like a frequency. So you're sending out like wavelengths, you know what I mean? Like woo 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 woo. And they okay, so think about that for a sec. All right, your brain being like a frequency counter, and well, not a frequency counter, but a frequency spouter, giving out frequencies, and you can change them to different frequencies. And why is this significant? Well, because when you start thinking about things being creative and like what creativity is, lots of studies have shown that when people are more creative, their frequencies, their wavelengths are higher. They're omitting, that's the right word, omitting a higher frequency when they're being more creative. And you start thinking about this, and you're like, wow, so there's a relationship between how fast my frequency is that I'm omitting from my brain and the level of deepness of creativity I'm getting. So this is the significant area of the science of this, because you can you think about creativity differently, you think about solving problems differently, and how to solve something that comes up, and looking at it as a different view. And so this brings me to Bob Proctor. Bob Proctor is he's a successful man. I think he's a speaker, but he says that when you make a decision, okay? Now, when you make a decision on something, what are you doing? You're having a mental wobbling of sorts, you know? Your brain is like, should I do this or this real quick? But when you make a decision, you're finalizing it. And what he says what you're doing is, when you make a decision, you are flipping a switch in your mind to the frequency that is on. And immediately when you flip that switch, you're going to start thinking on that frequency, thinking on the decision of the frequency that you made. So he's taking kind of the same exact look as Napoleon Hill. You know, he's saying that you can make a decision about something, and you can flip this switch. That's what a decision is. You're flipping the switch, and you're changing it to 98.5 or 99.9. Whatever frequency that decision's on, whatever is capable of coming from that decision, you can flip it onto that, and you're on that frequency, and if you keep going, you can get to it. So that's a really radical thought to think about, but in sense it does make a lot of sense. And this is kind of how I approach things and problems that I'm faced with. So that's just crazy if you think about it. But okay, so I got a story, and it ties this whole thing together. So in 1879, there was a company called Proctor and Gambill, okay, and they sold candles in 1879. So you think back, let's take the train back to History Town. And so what's happening in 1879? Well, Thomas Edison is creating the light bulb right now. So the fear of Procter and Gamble is that their best-selling product, the candle, is going to be no more. That's going to go away because there's the light bulb. The light bulb is revolutionary. Why would you need a candle? Why would you need a candle light at night when you can light your entire house with a light bulb? You know, for way less messy, and so they're scared right now. They're like, we're gonna go out of business, yo. This is not good. We need to figure out something out, and they're like stressing out, and they're. But this is the point here. Procter and Gambill, although they were on all this stress, they looked at it at a different way. Okay, so a couple weeks into this, and they're still afraid. A couple weeks into this, an employee in Cincinnati, in one of their factories in Cincinnati, he goes on a lunch break, and he forgets to turn his machine off. Okay, so he goes to his lunch break, comes back a couple hours later, he's like, oh no. He's like, oh man, they're gonna kill me. Oh, I'm fired for sure. I can't keep a job. So he's like, yo manager, I left the machine on. There's this crap in the machine. It's full of air bubbles in like a waxy material, and it's not good. It's not good. We got a mess on our hands. So they call up Procter and Gambill, and Procter and Gambill are like, oh, okay, well let's take a look at this thing. What is that? What have you created? What have you created? So they look at it and they look into it, and they decide to take this man's mess up and turn it into a soap bar. Okay? Now, this is the genius part. They made a decision to solve the problem of their dying business, of their unprofitable business after the light bulb is going to come up. The light bulb is going to come up, and we're going to lose money because we're not going to be able to sell candles. So how do we sell something else? So they're making a decision right there to find something else to sell. Okay? And then this problem arises, what most people would view as a big problem, making the machine, blow up and all this kind of like crap fill the machine, and the guy, he's probably gonna get fired. But look, they look at it differently, and they're like, okay, let's make this into something that we can use. Let's turn it into a soap bar. So they turn it into a soap bar. Okay, now what's great about this soap bar? There's other companies making soap bars. There's other people making soap in a way different way than messing up a candle. So the reason this soap bar is unique is because it can float. Okay, so this soap bar can float. And why is that special? Because most people in 1879 were taking baths and they were bathing themselves in the Ohio River. Okay, and in this river they would lose their soap because the soap would sink, and they'd be like, oh no, my soap is gone. But this soap floated because it was full of air bubbles. It was that man's mistake. So it floated. So they can like find their soap, and they can shower off and stuff. So they were a profitable business once again, and they sold lots of soap bars and stuff. But the whole point is that they saw this creativity not as a mess up, but as something different, because you can think about it different, And the whole frequency thing, I just think that's really cool. I don't know if that's how they thought about it. I don't know if not Bob Proctor, but Procter and Gambill, if they were aware of that, but they definitely were aware that they could think about it differently, and that's the whole point. You can solve problems, you can think about it differently, and keep your eyes open for opportunity, because a mess up could be the biggest opportunity ever. The mess up with the soap, and it turned into a big profit. Also, a big mess up in history, Rockefeller, and when he was selling his Standard Oil, and there was a runoff of clear liquid into the river, and the runoff was, it was just like flooding the river. But they were like, Rockefeller was like, what's this runoff? Have someone go investigate what we're putting into the river. Let's see what it is. And it turned out that clear liquid was gasoline. So their mistake of dumping into a river was actually they created gasoline. And yeah, I know you use gas in your car, so it's pretty crazy. But this video is long enough. Let me run through the brain. Being your brain as a frequency, you can make a decision, get on that frequency, and you can ride the frequency to success. Second, opportunities might look like failures. So keep your eyes open, and you can always solve a problem. Use your mind, creativity, use your brain. That's what that's what separates us from the mammals and the apes and the monkeys and stuff, is that we have cognitive thinking, and we can solve problems, and we can turn a stick not only into a back rub, but we can turn it into a beautiful like horse if we wanted to. We can cut it up and make a beautiful object. So that's a whole other topic. But anyway, stay positive and persevere. I'll be talking to you soon.